What's going on, guys? HipHaws here with a pretty quick tutorial on how to get a 3D object to render in front of your UI. If you take a look here, if I run around and I hit I, you can actually see that I replaced the background with a complete UI image. I just took this off of Google. I left the guy's signature on there and everything. I'm not trying to use this for anything. I just thought it was a pretty picture and congratulate him, throw it in the video. If he wants to get pissed off, then, you know, whatever. But you can also see that there's also a little image right in the middle, and you can see the little guy is rendering in there. Now, I want to make it clear that I am not actually rendering this one, and I'm not rendering myself. I am in fact rendering this one here. Okay, I added an extra one here. There is actually a mesh here, which I have set just so that he doesn't fall through the ground, and I've set that to be invis, which is literally just translucent material with 0 in opacity. That's the only thing that we have there. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. So our UI is very simple. I just have two images, one in the background, one in the front. So I have this image set to basically 1920 by 1080, and then I have this one here, which can basically be moved around, but for some reason, every time, I'm gonna swear here for a second, but every time I touch this thing, it moves to the fucking background, and I don't know why that shit happens. I keep having to move it back up. Maybe it's the name, maybe it's the ordering or something here. I don't know. I don't give a shit. I just move it back every time. It is kind of irritating. So now if I hit play, you can see that I've moved the image up into the corner, but we still see the guy. Now the guy is a live actor, so he can be rotated, lighting could be changed on him, this and that, and there's a few problems with doing it this way. For instance, the number one problem being, what if you don't have a place in your map that you can actually safely store this kind of thing? In that case, what I would do is try to find just some spot. I mean, you have a really pretty big universe out here, so I would try to just find a place to stick this kind of thing that nobody would see. Now, if there is no such thing as a place where nobody can see, say it's a space game and people can fly anywhere or something like that, and it's all in outer space, in that case you'd have to go through a little bit more. What you would want to do is you would want to spawn this, something like this, maybe not just using the character like I am here, but maybe spawn a copy of the character, transfer over any information like what is his color, what armors is he wearing, what weapon does he have, you know, get that data from your own character, then transfer that over to a kind of a dummy actor and make yourself the owner of that actor. And in that case, you can use the flag only owner see, and then nobody else will see it. But how we're doing it is really simple. You can actually see right here that I have a duplicate of this, and I'm not doing it the best way because there's a few things that came up that I didn't like. But the gist of it is that we have this actor here, which essentially, I just threw an arrow in here so I can see which way it's facing, but it's essentially a scene capture component 2D. And in its post-processing settings down under miscellaneous, we have blendables, and if you hit add here, you can actually add a blendable material. Now the blendable material is right here. So first off, the most important thing is that what you want to do is you want to take your material and you want to set the material domain to be post-process. The other important thing is to set this thing to aftertone mapping, which I believe is the default, but it seems to work just fine. And then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use a scene texture, scene depth. Now I just want to make this clear that when you bring this out, you're looking for scene texture, and it actually says scene color, not scene depth, but there is a drop down here that gives you all of these different things. So you can read, hey, I just want diffuse, I just want the specular, I just want the metallic, world normal, which is what I use for my matrix effect, just its opacity, roughness, and stuff like that. You can use all of this, but what we're using is actually the scene depth. So we take that and we divide, this is just like pixel depth, we divide it by how far away we want that to be cut off. And then again, I use a contrast here just to power it up because scene depth does work in grayscale. So like his hand, if it's pointing at the camera and the camera's really close, his hand will actually be closer than his head, so his hand would be brighter than his head. So if you don't clamp all those values, you'll get these weird fadey things where like he'd be pointing at you, and that area where his hand is will cause translucency, and you don't want that. So, and we don't forget to clamp. We're never going to forget to clamp ever again. And then we power it up, and we just mask to R so it just becomes a single value, so it gets fed into the alpha channel. And then what we do is we lerp a copy of the scene, which will this is just scene color. So this is just going to be, it's going to look pretty much like this, okay, including all the clouds and all that stuff in the background. That's what we'll get, okay. And then we lerp a copy of that, and then what I'm doing here is I'm lerping it over an actual image. Now this is where things got real shitty and I didn't like it. If I'll show you guys here. If I go to the parameters that I'm using, you can see that I got 2.39 here. So let me just show this copy right here. I just kept this here so I could adjust it. I had to come up with weird values because, okay, so 2.3, and so if I go to 1 by 1, because this is a post-process material, you can see that this is the texture that I'm using, and I was kind of hoping that it would just, you know, smack it right in the middle, like as if the camera was looking at it dead center, but it doesn't seem to work that way. There's actually something weird going on where you can see that it's causing, you know, like it's just seeing the upper corner, you know, even though it's centered to the thing. Remember that this material here is actually applied to a post-process effect, right? It's a full screen thing. So when you add a material like this, you end up getting, like I said, I thought that it would just center it to where the camera was, but it's not doing that. It's like cornering it out. So I added these controls here so that I could basically, what was it, like 1.83 or something like that? Basically, I used tiling to pull it into place. Okay, now this is not, absolutely not going to work if you're shitting a circle or a square. So what I would do in that case is something a little bit different. What I would do is I would give him a background here. I would put a plane here and I would put a background there, and I wouldn't worry about actually cutting out the depth. In fact, I would just record that straight up into a camera target, and then I would use a mask on here because I'm actually taking this one step further. This is what I'm rendering, so the 3D UI RTT. Let me go through how that's set up really quick so you guys know. So what happened is, let's go here. So what I did was I created this blueprint, right? Just gave it an arrow so I could see which way it's facing, and then I added the scene capture component 2D. Then I need to give it a texture target. Now to do that, you need to actually create one here, and I've named it 3D UI RTT for render texture target, and you can see that the type is render target, but you can find those by materials and textures, render target right here, and then all you got to do is in whatever blueprint, or if you just placed an actor, is just feed that information right here. And the other important thing is that you want this to be final color, and I believe it defaults to scene color. If you do scene color, it actually doesn't cut out properly. Okay, so you notice that it's no longer gonna allow me to mask it out to my image. So as soon as I essentially change that to be the LDR with post-process, which whatever that means, you can see that then the image comes back. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm taking, you know, the camera image, and then I'm masking it over basically my image based on the depth. Okay, so here is how we have figured out the depth. So if I were to plug this straight in and wait a second, you'll see that I get a mask for him. Okay, so that's just by depth. Now if I go to the parameters and I fiddle with this, like for instance, I set the contrast really high. If I set it to, like, you know, 0.5 or 1, he'll become kind of transparent. And if I set this too close, let's see, 450, 400, 200. See how we're starting to get the grayscale values of where he's at, and how that can cause problems with the way that things are going to mask. So what I do is I tend to push it, you know, kind of high. And again, we could use the contrast to kick that into its, you know, into another range or whatnot. But if you push this far enough back, you basically get it clean anyway. And you got to remember here that, you know, we do actually have a mesh behind him. There's a skybox here. I can't see an outline of it because I'm inside of the sphere, but it is a mesh, so it's not going in an infinite distance. So if you were to want to put a background on him, like I said, you could just put any material texture that you wanted. Say, because actually the question came up because somebody has wanted to do this, and the frame for the little characters is actually like a tattered flag. What you would do for that is you would actually do that here. Okay, so what we would be doing, we'd be rendering him in front of like a burlap type sack texture or something like that, and then we would use the opacity and whatnot from our flag here, right, to do the whole thing, because we want to avoid having to do a double capture. We don't want to capture the mask and then also have to capture the scene itself. So that's why I think it actually would be a good idea to allow it to contain the background, and in that case it becomes even like infinitely more simple than what I'm even doing here. Okay, because you don't even need to worry about this. You just need to capture the scene and then mask it out in a different material like this, and then you could put it anywhere in your UI, move it around, shift its layers and whatnot, and it'll still work. But if you did want to, you know, key him out, the only real way to do that like cleanly is through a depth mask. Otherwise you have to create a green screen, then you have to mask out the green screen, and in that case, if that's the case, you have effectively removed the ability to use whatever color you use on the green screen. None of your objects in your entire world can ever have that color. Now, can you be 100% certain that down the road you're never going to say, hey, I got a robot with a green light on him, or I want a green exhaust coming out of something and I want to still see that? That's going to get dropped out as soon as you throw it in front of a green screen and start cutting out anything that's green, right? So, and you say, oh, well, then I'll just use hot pink. Well, then, okay, so that's perfectly fine, but are you sure you're never going to use hot pink? You're never going to have a pink laser? You're never going to have a pink eyeball? You never really know. So we want to use the depth, because in that case, no matter what colors or anything like that, we don't care. We use that to run the mask. Okay, and like I said, the only weird thing is this right here, and I really don't like it. But what I would do, in essence, is I would replace this with like a different type of texture, like an actual like material type texture, like, you know, something that would be, you know, I don't know, like I said, burlap sack or some kind of wood or something, whatever you wanted the character to actually be in front of. So just going through it again really quick: scene depth divided by the distance. We clamp that, we power it, the only reason I'm doing the mask here is because I want to make sure that scene depth isn't coming in as any kind of XYZ or anything like that. I'm pretty sure I didn't need it, and that if I go like this, it actually gives me an error. See, float 4 to float 2. So I mask it out so that, because just out of curiosity, this right here is actually the same as this right here. This actually counts as 0, 0, 0, 0. It actually can be also used as a 4 vector. It's just, if you were to multiply like a color by a scalar, every component of this color vector would be multiplied by the single component. That is in fact how that works. So we do that, and then like I said, we just take the scene color and we mask that to RGB, for the sake of the fact that it can actually, I think if you don't do that, this is also a 4 vector. You might get an error. See, float 3 and float 4. So we turn that to a float 3, and that gets rid of the error. Okay, even though there's no alpha channel here, it's still for some dumbass reason giving us the 4th component of a vector. And that's all we do there. And then, like I said, in the 3D viewer mat, all I do here is use that texture, whatever it ends up being, and then I just mask out the whole thing, because this is the final. If I look at the widget, the final image is in fact this 3D view mat, this one here. Okay, not this one here. This one is what's assigned to this camera's blendable, which becomes, like I said, like a post-process material. Now, like I said, it can be a little tricky, but it does work, and you can do it, and it can be clean, and it is in fact based pretty much entirely on the resolution of this guy. So I made it 512. If you go 256 by 256 and you save that, when you hit play, it will be significantly lower resolution. Actually, I need to go ahead and apply that guy, I believe. So if we hit I there, Okay, and you can see without my tiling on there, without the tiling parameters hooked up, that the framing doesn't work correctly. But you can still see that he is in a UI image. It is him in front of whatever UI image that you want there. And like I said, if you really wanted to, let's say, where would the textures be? Where are the fucking textures here? Let's just filter by texture and get off static mesh. And let's just say we want him in front of this cobblestone or something, right? I could put that in here and replace that here, and he'll now be in front of cobblestone as opposed to that image, right? So we can apply that. And I'll just go look over here. I'll stop playing and I'll just look over here. So there he is in front of the cobblestone, you know, and you can tile that however you wanted to. So this could be, you know, like I said, like cloth or something like that. And then the alpha channel, remember, is from here, from this image here. So if you did actually, let's actually do the cloth banner really quick, right? I'll just fake something up super fast. So we'll go 512 by 512, and let's just make some kind of like, you know, like tattered cloth banner here. Okay, and essentially what we need to do is we just kind of needs to be a mask. Now if it needs details and shit like that, you don't have to totally worry about that. But we'll just take that as so, and then what I'll do is I will come here, and I think if I go filter texture, texturizer, not complete because it's empty. Okay, well let's just fill it with 50% gray, like so, and we'll go filter. Like I said, you can make any material that you want. I'm just trying to do something silly and quick. So let's go to texturizer, and we can go here and canvas, and we'll go burlap, and we'll just hit OK. So we got that, and we got our alpha channel, right? So let's, I mean, like I said, you can use whatever you want. So we'll just say flag test, and that will be TGA, and we want to make sure it's 32-bit, so we do get the alpha channel, assuming this is different color, right? I'm just using something fake. And let's bring that image in. I do want to put it in the right location. By the way, you can turn these off and on just by clicking on the name. You don't have to actually remove the filter. It's kind of handy. Alright, so let's go there, and flag test, boom. Now the other thing is when you're dealing with the UI, you do want to come in here and you do want to set these things to be like user interface, and you probably want to set the texture group to be UI. It just removes any weird ass like artifacting shit. I do that all the time whenever I do it, but you don't have to. And now we can come here and bring this up, and basically we can just use this as the opacity instead. So you can see that, you know, it's now cut out based on that flag shape, and like I said, if you really want to, we could take the burlap into here and use that instead to determine how much we want it to tile that actual texture. Okay, so I don't think this got applied. There we go. So now he's on like a flag, and you could pretty this up however you want, and it should work just no problem as soon as I come in here. So there he is. He's in the flag shape, you know, that shitty shape that I created. So, and like I said, you know, the background texture can be whatever you wanted to. Now if you wanted that to have like lighting information in the background, I would instead create a like burlap material that isn't masked by any kind of shape, and essentially stick it on a shape plane. So you can always type plane, click on content, put it on a shape plane, and stick that behind him, and then you will now have to adjust your stuff here. Actually, you'll have to adjust the depth mask, because that is working on him. Am I getting any of... Probably need to power up the get out of here, the parameters for the contrast. Okay, so now you can clearly see that he's actually not here. In fact, I'll put this black void material on there, and you can see that like my depth is no longer correct. That now I actually have to adjust my depth to pull it closer so that it gets cut out. You see that? Because if I go too far, I pick up that background as well, which is pretty far. It's about 1500, right? Or so. So anything like right about here. I tend to want it to be like just behind the guy. So you can see here, you know, like we can go part way through them, right? So you could blend them in if you wanted to over time. I mean, these are totally controllable. But it does work, and I think it's a pretty decent method. It's not the cheapest method in the world, but however, if you're not capturing a whole bunch of things like constantly, if you're only doing this one thing and it's only local player, it should be pretty much fine. I can't see why it would be that big of a deal. And again, you know, there's nothing stopping you if you feel like it's shitty quality to, you know, really come in here and crank this up. I wouldn't go like 2048 or something like that, but you can see the quality just got a lot better, you know, just from doing that alone. So we hit save, then we hit play. Now if I hit T, or sorry, I, you can see he's up there, and he's pretty small, and you know that there's really nothing stopping you from coming here and saying, you know, hey, that's actually like 1024, like so. Just compile that. We hit play, and I hit I, and you know it's pretty good quality, 1024, and he's got a nice edge on him. You know, it's a little anti-alias, and you can see that we can see through his foot a little bit. Again, that's just the distance. You just go push it a little bit back, maybe throw up the contrast just a little bit. That's really all you got to do there. But that's it. So hopefully you guys found that useful. If you guys have any questions, let me know. It can be a little weird and a little daunting at first, but it does in fact get the job done. So Hippo signing off, and I'll see you guys in the next one.